New videos every day.
Okay, so last time I did a video on internet addiction, and I told you that I would do a video on how to overcome it. But today, what I want to talk to you about is the psychology of addiction. For instance, how does somebody become addicted, or why does somebody become addicted? And today, I'm going to use internet addiction as an example, but it really and truly could be used for any type of addiction. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you a question, and I definitely want your comments entered in. It's going to help me prove a point later. My question is, what are 5 things that people become addicted to? And if there's something in your personal life that you've had some level of addiction, that would be even better, but at least 5 things. If you need to pause the video, you can, and then resume it, and then we'll get started. Let me take a wild guess on what some of the answers are. Alcohol, gambling, drugs, sex, pornography, sugar, caffeine, chocolate, video games, internet addiction. And what do all these have in common? Let's think about that for a minute. What do all these things have in common? Well, 9 out of 10 times people enjoy them. It feels good. It's pleasurable. So this is real simple. If something is pleasurable, you're attracted to it. And if something is painful or it hurts, you try and stay away from it. You're repulsed by it. So people are attracted to those things that are more pleasurable. For instance, when you go to make a decision, do you base it on what's reasonable or logical or what's best for you? Or do you make the decision based on what you more like? That's what most people do. For instance, if you go to a party, who's the first person you walk up to? Usually it's the person you like the most. Or when you're trying to decide on what food to eat, do you sit there and think about, well, what's the best for me? Or do you instantly want to go to something that you like? And it works the same when you're trying to pick a movie. Are you trying to pick the best movie for you, or what's more logical, or are you going to pick the movie that you like or you think you'll like the most? So it works the opposite with pain. For instance, if you have a woman who's been in a few bad relationships, it becomes painful. She decides she doesn't want to have anything to do with men anymore. Or another example would be the dentist. Some people will not go to the dentist even if their teeth are causing pain because they know going to the dentist will be painful. Another example would be if somebody gets stung by a bee and then they are afraid of bees and try and steer clear, and sometimes they can develop a phobia of bees. So looking at this from an evolutionary psychology viewpoint, somewhere along the line the mind was evolving and it got to where it would be attracted to those things that are pleasurable and repulsed from things that are painful. Normally this mechanism works pretty well. We're rewarded for those things which enhance our survival. For instance, eating is pleasurable. Having sex feels good. And accomplishing our goals also feels good. And then we're penalized or punished for those things which are harmful for our survival. For instance, breaking a leg hurts, or breaking up in a relationship also hurts. Or losing your job and your paycheck also hurts. So the problem is that man got a little too smart and found a way to cheat it. The best example would be drugs. Instead of going out and accomplishing something in your life or doing something to give you pleasure, you can just pop a pill and feel really great. Another example would be porn. You can get all this sexual pleasure without actually having sex or reproducing. Okay, so let's talk about video games. Normally in your everyday life, you're rewarded with pleasure for accomplishing your goals. For instance, if you win the lottery, Or when you get a new girlfriend, it's pleasurable. Or if you get a better job, it's also pleasurable. What video games do is it gives you those accomplishments and goals, and it rewards you with the same pleasure, even though you're not actually out doing something physically. You're in a virtual world. So what video games do is it gives you the same pleasure without going out and doing something in the real world. You're actually in a virtual world. For instance, when you get a new level in your video game, it's pleasurable. Or when you finally get your epic mount in World of Warcraft, it's pleasurable. Or when you get a promotion in your guild, it's also very pleasurable. So in essence, you're getting all the pleasure from not really doing any hard work or effort. Is that a bad thing? Well, not necessarily. That's what we call entertainment. But just keep in mind, those things that we call easy pleasure can be somewhat addictive. So at what point does something stop being entertainment or a hobby and people start calling it an addiction? Well, I can sum that up in one word, and that's neglect. For instance, if you're partying out all night and your grades suffer at school, or you stay up all night playing World of Warcraft and your job performance struggles, or if you're looking at porn all the time and you start neglecting your wife, that's when people start saying that there's an addiction. Okay, so what you need to understand is how psychiatrists classify mental disorders. They ask a couple questions. The first one is, does it cause distress? And the other one is, does it cause impairment in life? These things that you're doing don't actually cause the distress. Playing video games, looking at porno, partying. It's when you start neglecting the stuff in your real life that you actually have distress. For instance, if you're playing video games instead of spending time with your kids and your wife, then your wife is going to get upset, you're going to start fighting, and then you're going to have distress. Or if you have a big exam and instead of studying, you go out partying all night, then when you come in for your exam, you're going to have distress, aren't you? So it works the same with the impairment of life function. These things that you're doing aren't causing the impairment. It's the neglecting of your life and the functions that you should be doing that are actually causing the impairment. Remember earlier we spoke about the mind and how it runs away from pain and how it's attracted to pleasure. So what happens if your life becomes painful and the only thing you have left in your life is one thing that's pleasurable? What happens after you've been neglecting your life time after time? What happens is it becomes less pleasurable. Then you start having problems at work, problems at school, problems with your wife, and then it gets to be it's just painful. And then eventually, all you have left is the thing that you were addicted to. Now, at the point that you're doing that one thing that's pleasurable to avoid the rest of your life or the things in your life that are painful, that's what we call escape. So why does someone become addicted to something? Well, it's because it's their main source of pleasure throughout their entire life. The reason you spend so much time on the internet or doing whatever it is that you're spending most of your time doing is because there's nothing else in your life you get as much pleasure as you do from doing that. For instance, if you had something better to do or more pleasurable to do, you'd be doing that instead of watching this video. Or why do kids play video games so much? Well, if they had something more pleasurable to do, then they'd be doing that. How do you avoid being labeled or being forced into some sort of treatment? Well, you just don't neglect your life. You can still go out and party, you can still play video games, you can still go gambling, as long as you take care of your life. I hope I explained the psychological dynamic of addiction. Now, me personally, the way I would approach it is I wouldn't take away your internet or your games I would make you go out and do things in your life to repair your life so that you were getting some pleasure from that. I'll probably do another video on addiction and ways to beat it. So if you're interested, you might want to subscribe for that. I really appreciate you watching. Please rate the video and leave any comments. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you next time.